This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
We are TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Astronauts to the moon.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Not to get off track here, but I feel like we're in the Truman Show, and we're in a snow globe, and they just shook it up.
Welcome to reality.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and I guess pets too. Welcome to Jeranism. It's Monday Night Raw. I'm Jaren, and with me, as we traverse this crazy, wonderful world of ours, is my better half, my best friend, my wife, Nissa. Say hello.
Hello, TFR world. I am,
Why don't you, You got to listen last week, so in bed, sick. But you're doing better, right?
Much better, yes.
96%?
And a half.
So I'm sure everyone heard last week as I spent 2 hours kind of giving everyone an update of where we have been, what we've been through. So did I miss anything? Or I probably didn't talk about you and your personal life much, so you might want to give them a little bit about you, just, you know, where you come from, what slums you crawled out of, those kind of things.
Yes, I was born and raised in a big family, as well as a Christian family, very, very Christian. I have 7 brothers and sisters, 4 sisters and 3 brothers. And my dad is Filipino. My mom is lots of Caucasian. And let's see. So being raised in a Christian home, I know that means kind of a lot of different things these days because of the so many different types of Christian beliefs and branches and things. But for me, our family was very Bible believing, and at least to a certain extent, it was a very modernish, but it was very strict in terms of, you know, there's no sex before marriage.
Oops.
But we went to church, not religiously, so to speak, but pretty much every Sunday. I was on the worship team in junior high and high school. So it was like Wednesday nights and Sundays I would sing and not lead worship, but there would be like a guitar player and we would do that whole thing. And my sister did it too and everything. So that was kind of just my life. I went to school, went to church. But the thing about church for me was there in Christianity there's this prayer that is like asking Jesus into your heart sort of thing. And I can specifically remember asking my mom to pray that prayer with me probably like 3 times because I never felt it. I never felt Jesus coming into my heart. I was like, Mom, I don't think I'm saved because I keep praying and Jesus isn't coming in my heart. And she's like, oh, honey, if you mean it, then, you know, I'm like, whatever. So my mom always, whenever I would have questions, she would always give me interesting answers. Like, was like, Mom, what if we're around for the end times? And she's like, well, God's supposed to come and get us before then. But if we're here, we'll pull together and we'll survive. And I was like, that's not even what the Bible teaches. But anyways, so as I got into my older teens and started getting into the secular world and realizing it's a lot more fun out there than in the church world, I think Jaron told you last week that he hired me for it wasn't my first job, but it was 5 months, and I was employee of the quarter, so that was pretty cool.
Shh.
And then after that, I went and worked at a boutique in Carmel, and this is where...
It's actually funny. I was so worried about her getting me in trouble because we were kind of starting to talk like we were interested in each other. And I was so worried about her getting me in trouble that I think I don't remember if I wrote a note to you or you wrote a note to me, but something happened where I told you to burn it.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Oh my God, yeah. It was like a junior high kind of feel, but we wrote each other a little note, and then at the end of his it said, so after you read this, you have to burn it or else you'll get fired.
Somebody's going to find it.
It was pretty funny. I didn't burn it, actually. I kept it, so maybe I was supposed to burn it. But anyways, so working at Augustina's, it was a good job. I mean, I started out working just 10 to 4, Monday through Friday, but very quickly, because I was a workhorse, meaning kind of whatever job I had, I just wanted to work all the time. And so I worked Mondays. I ended up working Monday through Saturday, and sometimes going in on Sundays to open and then going back home after. But it would get there at 8:30 in the morning and then be off at 6:30, I think. So it was, and I was kind of the jack of all trades, I guess you could call me over there. I would do pretty much everything or anything my boss would want me or ask me to do. So it was very stressful. She would pay under the table, so she would kind of keep people around or employees around by kind of bribery. So it's kind of not so very much legal, but it was definitely very strenuous, and I had to wear heels every day, and heels. I was not allowed to wear anything but heels every day, which just killed my feet afterwards. After I stopped working there, I would get cramps that would send me to the floor just weeping.
Yeah, when you got home from work, you would sometimes just be crying.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Oh, yeah, that was bad. But, so then it was in, I think it was 2012. No. Did I quit Augustina's in 2010?
I think 9, maybe.
Maybe it was 2009. But, then I went and worked for a tanning salon, and then after that, I think I worked for a month at a Salinas glass company, which if I really needed a job, really, really bad, I think I would have stayed there because it was really fun. But then we moved here to our new home, and then we got married, and then that's just when everything started to
hit the fan.
And we since both of us were sort of religious but not religious, if that makes sense. We both came from Catholic Christian families, so we both sort of had that always that I don't know, what would you call it, God,
yeah, I describe it as we couldn't get rid of the creator. Now whether that's a product of actually being something that was ingrained to us as children, or whether that's something that's actually in us, is of course,
know.
Yeah, it's something we'll never know.
Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of tell you guys what we have planned for tonight, and this is a direct result from emails that I got and Facebook messages. Seemed that after last week, there was quite a few people who had questions about my religion and why I don't believe in the Bible and what's wrong with Christianity. And So I thought I did a good job of explaining that last week, but because it's only our second show, and because I do think it's important for people to know kind of what they're getting into in listening to the show, I do want to kind of talk about it. So I do want to cover some of that, and just to give my opinion. And to all the Christians out there, I mean, please understand that my mom is Catholic. Was my family's Catholic. My wife's family is Christian.
My whole family. I'm the only one that's not.
And in fact, you're telling about your sister and your brother-in-law.
So my sister, my oldest sister, well, I guess she's the firstborn of the Yap family, and she married a man. I guess I could say his name, Levi Lesko, and they met in Albuquerque, and then moved to LA, and then moved to Montana, kind of out of nowhere, and started a little church out there. And it grew from, I believe it started out with like 15 people, and then now he buys little grandma's shops and turns them into like
remote locations.
Yeah, it just turned into this huge thing, and you guys type in his name and crazy stuff will come up. But I mean, it's not a bad thing, but it is very. My mom even said she called it more of a movement, which I don't even really know what that means if it's a Christian church. But my whole family, very, very Christian still. Can't really talk about anything outside of that with them.
Yeah, and we're both kind of the black sheep a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that people understood that I like Christians. It's not a matter of I can't stand Christians. And we did, like I told you last week, bounce back and forth between being Christian and being as close to atheist, I guess, as you can without really ever fully, touting it.
We kind of looked into everything.
Yeah, we kind of went through everything.
As we learned, as we looked into things and saw like truth in different things, we're like, oh wow, that's cool. These people think that, and like almost became, maybe not became, but we looked into everything, and so basically could have become.
Well, it could have been anything. I mean, we went from the occult, having all these books. We have, again, a wealth of knowledge at our hands, and then you throw on top of that the internet, and you have basically all the information you could want. And we found a lot of truth in old books, if you find the right, edition, obviously. But reading some of that old stuff really kind of showed us an appreciation for books, because we did find it as a way to keep somebody's word. Again, you have to look at the edition and where it's released, because there is some books that change throughout the years, or chapters are dropped or added. But in that, I felt like we were pretty well-rounded. And so I do have an opinion of the Bible, and that's kind of what I was going to talk to you about tonight, because a lot of people, like I said, I love Christians, and I think that they're definitely more on the correct path than atheists or many other types. But on the other hand, I do have issues. I try not to talk too much about religion. I don't want to dwell on that. I think there's a lot of other things that are important, but it seems like
their own kind of thing too.
Yeah, and I believe that. I believe each person should be able to believe whatever they want. Unfortunately, a lot of people, not unfortunately, because I welcome any messages, any emails, any questions. And so tonight we're going to take some calls, probably in the second half of the show. So if you want to call in and question on anything, it's completely open as far as what you ask. But just understand that I'm going to give you a completely open answer. That's just how we are. It's, again, going back to the whole idea of truth. I think it's the most important thing that there is, that any relationship you've lost in your life, any boyfriend, any girlfriend, any divorce that you've had,
even
frustration,
family relationship too.
Absolutely. Frustrations with your parents or with your kids is probably over some sort of dishonesty. So when Melissa and I got together, it was something that was very important to us to at least remain honest with each other. And over the last year or two, we've really put forth a solid effort to be honest to the world when we've seen and we've been screwed in different ways by different people. And there's no worse feeling than putting your trust in someone and having them break it. So that's kind of where we come from. And so I did want to talk a little bit about the Bible and why I have the feelings that I do. And again, after you listen, if you have questions or comments, please call, because I would love to answer them. And then hopefully we don't have not hopefully, but I don't plan on having another show where I just kind of talk about that. So I guess...
Want me to talk about my
sure
Bible thing? Because there's a big difference between Catholics and the Bible and Christians in the Bible. And I didn't know that really, the depths of it, until we got married, and the past couple of years too. But me and my church and my family, the Bible was the truth. It was God's word. And so I always actually hated reading. I never liked books. And probably it stemmed from being a churchgoer, being told that the Bible is the one and only true book, so why would I need to read any other book? But, I memorized verses, and, it wasn't until the past couple years when when our minds started to open, that we would read something in the Bible and be like, I read that book before, and I never saw that in there. And it opened my eyes to, like, churches in general, preachers, pastors, or whatever, when they're teaching out of the Bible and teaching whatever sermons, I think sometimes they don't even really read out of the Bible. I think they just tell you their opinion and then say, oh, this Bible verse is actually in support of that, or whatever. So I know, me and Jaren both know the Bible very, very well, and we always go back and forth all the time. Like, there's some cool stuff in here, and there's like, oh man, this is really bad. But we just kind of we're kind of on the fence with it.
Yeah, I would say it's an incredibly important book. I always refer to it as the best book ever written. I think that is pretty much without a doubt. But the one thing that I do have an issue with, and of course this is going to be the make or break point between the people that treat it one way and the people who treat it another. I think that to put the title of God's Word over it is a pretty lofty statement. And it's not something that I think people take serious enough when they say that. Telling you about when I was an atheist, or when I was kind of going towards that and trying to learn some of the things that they argue, because I wanted to come from a place of knowledge and not just a place of, well, I'm just going to trust whatever they say. Mm-hmm. I saw a lot of the same signs as religion in science. Absolute, no doubt, it was the exact same thing. And the problem with the Bible being construed as God's Word is, I think people would be surprised at the amount of people who have turned their back on religion, on Christianity, on the Bible, and the good things in it, is because of people, Christians, who claim that the book is word for word God's Word, which, if that's true, it tells a pretty grotesque story of our Creator. Totally different stories. Like, they'll go from murdering a bunch of people to being okay with women being beaten, and then maybe homosexuality. I don't even know if the Bible actually specifically talks about it more than maybe one verse. But it's just all these different things that don't represent to us in our minds the creator of this world at all. It's a totally different personality. Absolutely. So yeah, to describe, they very much, and I always say this, that if any God that any person has ever described is incorrect, because, and I would say that for me as well, which is why I don't try and describe it, because it's otherworldly, meaning it doesn't fit in our realm. It doesn't match necessarily our reality. But I do know, just by looking at myself, by contemplating the fact that we're just here, living, breathing, that there was a higher mind behind it all. Now, what is the end result of that all? What will happen on our final day? We don't know. You know, and I don't think anybody who does say they know is being honest. You know, I don't think that they are being honest. So where I have an issue with the Bible is if it were, like I've said before, engraved in gold and it hovered above the North Pole for everyone to go and marvel at, and it couldn't be explained, how could it possibly be hovering, this gold paged book? That would be another story if we all said, well, this must be the word of the Creator.
Or if you tried to change something in the book, then your hand would be cut off magically or something.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing, growing up, I read that last line of Revelation that said anybody who adds to or subtracts from this book will be, subject to the plagues. I actually believed that, and so I looked at it as, oh, well, this book is unchanged. It is not touched because it says right here. And so I guess that was easy for me to grow out of, mostly because I was a Catholic. So I think it was obvious to me, my mother, priests, people that were important in my life, all said the same thing about the Bible.
That surprised me. That surprised me when you told me that your upbringing said the Bible was not it was not at all what Christians Christians think it's inspired word for word, tittle for tittle or whatever. But Catholics absolutely not. They're like, don't take it literally. It's just a book. I'm like, but we
not just a book, because everything that they are is based on it.
True.
But they certainly don't say word for word. For instance, I don't think that we were taught that Adam and Eve is a true story. That was taught as allegory. And so that helped me see, growing up and growing out of that to be the creator of a world and give your word to people, it would have to be so concrete that it wasn't something that would have to be taken in a certain context, or, oh, well, you've got to read the whole paragraph. Oh, well, it's allegorical. Oh, no, this is literal.
Tell you what it means.
Right. Or a pastor needs to explain it to you.
Yeah.
I always go off of don't trust men. And this is something that everyone should agree that there's probably nobody in your life, and I would be very shocked if anybody disagreed, that has ever not lied to you at some point. And even if you think there is, I would bet money that they've lied to you and you just don't know. Mm-hmm. So at that point, it became clear to me that I don't want to face God in my final day, the Creator, and be questioned as to why I believed what so-and-so said, or why I believed what a book said. To me, books are written by human beings. In fact, Christians will believe that books are written by human beings. The difference is that they say God inspired them to write those things, which may or may not be true. But let's say that I have a certain epiphany one night where I feel God's presence, and all of a sudden I just start writing, and I get a couple paragraphs out. They sound great. They seem like they didn't come from my head. Well, I still don't think that gives me any permission to pass that on to anyone else, maybe as a personal story, maybe as a, hey, Joe, look what, these things that I wrote down the other day, don't you think these are profound? Maybe in that context, but never to put them in a book and then say, this is God's word. Because there's some things in there that clearly don't jive with some people's idea of God. And I think, unfortunately, the Bible has done, I can't say more damage than good, but it certainly has done some damage in the fact that there's a lot of atheists who do not believe in God because Christians believe that the Bible is word for word from God. And so throughout the entire Bible, you have first a God who tempts mankind by putting a tree in the garden. If God only cared for the happiness of people and that's all that was important, then why would he put a tree in the garden? Now, people have their various explanations for that. But once the first person falls or the first person eats from the tree, then where I have a problem with that is, well, if God had a choice between, well, I can either kill these first two humans and start over again, or I can let the next 100 billion people be born into sin and death and suffering, Well, that's where I start having problems with the idea of the Christian God. I don't see it as being plausible, and this is where I think Christians don't understand that people who have become atheists have made a conscious decision not to worship the God of the Bible. Now, I feel I'm just more, I don't want to say adult, I'm more forward-thinking than that. I understand that just because the God of the Bible is not a particular God that I would worship doesn't
it's not
mean
the God. So it's not like you have to choose between either you don't have to choose either the God of the Bible or no God. That's like the false, I like to say false dichotomy, but that might be incorrect. But it's the idea of it's either this or that. And then so people get extreme if they all of a sudden don't agree with one or the other, then they go full-fledged the other way. And I think that's not how we're supposed to live at all.
No, and I saw it firsthand that there is some atheists out there who hate God. Now, do they hate the creator of this world? No, because they don't know of a creator of this world, because it was taught to them in pages of a book that describe a tyrant, that describes someone who's vindictive, who's angry, who's jealous. Well, guess what? Those are human traits, not God traits. And so I have a little bit of a problem with Christians claiming over and over again that the God of the Bible is the God. And to me, they come across as very scared when they say, oh, I'm God-fearing. And, okay, well, if you're an evil person, maybe you should fear God. But if you're not, then you should love God. You should feel God in you and in your interactions with people, not just backing away from that and saying, no, I fear God. I need to pray to him and that he saves me. So
that was the whole thing with...
What?
Oh, sorry.
We'll be right back, and we'll talk some more about it and talk about some specific verses. Talk to you soon. This is Jeranism and Missa. This is Raw. Monday
We'll be
night.
right back.
The Rundown live with Mike and Kristen, Monday through Thursday on Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. This is Jeranism. It is Monday night, and this is Raw. Glad you're joining us wherever you may be. Again, we'll be taking calls the second half of the show. So after this next break, we can start taking some calls, but just wanted to cover some small aspects. I'm going to kind of go through our opinion of the Bible and why I see it as not God's word, but simply mankind's interpretation of God, mankind's opinion of who they think God is. And in some cases, they're going to get it right. They're going to be really close. But in other cases, I think it's clear that they got it wrong. And again, I don't think of a God who interjects into human lives. I think that the greatest gift we were given is the gift of free will. Now, explain to me, if it makes any sense to you, that God would give us free will to do what we want, but then punish those who choose not to follow him. So, where I have a problem with that is am I giving you free will if I walk up to you, put a gun to your head, and say, you have free will right now to either give me your wallet or take a bullet? That's not really free will. The whole definition of free is to be given something and requiring no payment. That's free will. So I look at it as until you have freely chosen to follow who you want based on the attributes of the person you follow, that's when you can truly say you have used your gift of free will. Now, to me, the God of the Bible is not somebody who I would worship. The reason for that is because I'm going to worship somebody who is, or something, or some entity that is far beyond me in every aspect, is more moral than me, is funnier than I am, is taller than I am, is is stronger than I am, is more understanding, more knowledgeable. That's who you worship. And unfortunately, to me, the Bible doesn't come across that way. It seems like it is not a fair situation. For instance, we have 100 years of life on this earth. If you're lucky, let's say you get 80. Well, would we call it justice if somebody who did a crime got eternal punishment for that crime? Is that justice? I mean, even if we're talking about somebody Stalin, who killed millions or was responsible for the death of millions, does that person deserve eternity in hell? You know, I think if you say yes there, well,
That's crazy.
that's crazy. I mean, it's not
What happened to eye for an eye? And not
Right.
like if you pluck out your eye, then you're going to have to burn millions of eyes forever or something stupid.
right. I mean, it's not correct. It's not the right way to look at it. And I almost think if you do believe in that kind of justice, well, don't you think that looks bad on you? Yeah. I mean, Jesus said, turn the other cheek, love your enemy, things like that I can resonate with. Treat others better than you would treat yourself. You know, those things make sense. They are great words to live by. Now, he also said, if you deny me, I'll deny you to the Father. But at the same time, this same man said, turn the other cheek and love your enemies. So this is where I have a little bit of a disconnect, where I start to see some things possibly written into the Bible at some time that don't mean that they were Jesus' words. There's stories in there that seem like mistakes. For instance, there is on the same page, and when I say that, I mean in our Bible, on the left-hand page and the right-hand page, they tell a story of Jesus feeding 5,000, and we all know that story. And on the page on the right, there's a story about Jesus feeds 4,000. And on the page on the right, the second story, the disciples ask Jesus when he says, well, don't send them away, let's give them something to eat. And all the disciples say, huh?
But Jesus, how will we feed everybody?
How will we feed them? As if it's never happened. So it doesn't even matter if the stories were flip-flopped, because regardless, in one of the stories, the disciples should have known exactly what was going on since he had done it before. Mm-hmm. So that's a small example, but it also shows me that it just cannot be said to be perfect. For instance, it says that no man can see God's face and live, and yet then it says that God saw Moses face to face. As a friend sees a friend. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, these are the little things that I looked at and said, okay, so if the book isn't perfect, then can't I understand that people wrote how they really felt? And to me, I see the Bible as kind of a history of humankind. I see it as going from a primitive belief in God to a more profound belief in God, to Jesus coming and saying, no, God is within you. You know, you have to go through me to get to the Father. Now, he's not, in my opinion, saying me as in Jesus. He meant you have to go through me. So imagine me saying that to you and pointing to myself as in you have to go through me to get through to God. Now, if it's written on pen and paper, it can be construed in a lot of different ways. And I think this is another important fact. Did you know that the Bible was written with no punctuation at all? The entire Bible was written with no punctuation. And have you ever done any studies into what punctuation can do to a sentence? You know, I tell the story all the time of, Jesus saying, beware in the future that many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ. Do not be misled. Well, if you just move the commas around of that sentence, all of a sudden he could be saying, many will come in my name, aka Christians, which is Christ, Christians. Many will come in my name, saying that I am the Christ. As in, I, Jesus, am the Christ. Do not be led astray. So there's a lot of different ways that it can be read and a lot of different ways it can be misconstrued. And when you get into just the translations, I mean, the amount of times the Bible has been translated, and then there's languages like, German, right?
Yeah, German. The German language is crazy. There's so many words that you can't translate into English, and I think the English. It's not even English. I think it's actually American is what the original label for it was, because English is for Europe or whatever. But so my thing with the Bible is that it shows me, like, this is what happens when people want or need a savior, or need a leader to lead them, or need some authority to give them their way of living. They need something from somebody else in order to be fulfilled. And this, what happens is you create false, I guess you could say false religions or false ideas of life when they're absolutely incorrect, because we all know that power corrupts. So if there's a bunch of people around you, like, hey, we need a leader, and then someone steps up and like, I'll be your leader, and like, well, why should you be our leader? Because I know God. We're like, okay, well then from there, I mean, you can just control the minds of those people. But I think the Bible is a perfect example of look what happens when people don't look inside themselves for the truth, or even for help. I mean, yeah, we need other people to help us sometimes, but to look only for somebody outside of yourself to feel loved, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to God is inside of us, and I think the evidence for that is so evident and so is so tangent that it's just impossible, or tangible. It's impossible to deny that you have that gut feeling when you do something wrong. And this is something I found at a very early age, being that, and I don't like to use the word sin because I don't think of it as a sin, but let's say when I'm 20 years old and I go out and have a nice date with a girl for 2 or 3 dates or whatever, and we end up sleeping together. Well, I don't feel bad inside for doing that. Now, does that mean that you should go out and have one-night stands? No, because that's not how relationships should be started. But if you go into a Kmart and you steal things just because you're bored and because you see a headset that you want, you're going to feel that inside you that you've done something wrong. Mm-hmm. If you punch somebody in the face, you're going to feel bad for doing it. And if you hand somebody a bouquet of flowers, you're going to see the smile on their face and be warm inside, and that's what God is. That's who tells you what's right and wrong, not a book.
No, if you dishonor your father or mother, if you like yell at them and you tell, I hate you, Mom, or whatever, I'm sure some people feel bad, but those people who do feel bad, are they thinking first, oh man, that hurts me inside, it probably hurts my mom, or are they thinking, oh shoot, that's the 4th commandment, I'm breaking the book commandments?
Right.
No, it's your feeling inside. Sorry, it's your feelings inside of you that determine right from wrong inside of yourself. I mean, obviously, there's general things that are bad and good.
Well, but there's the truth too. I mean, if the 10 Commandments seem like they are rules that you must follow, but again, if the commandment says thou shalt not kill, but if somebody comes into my house tonight with the intent to hurt my wife or myself, they're probably going to die. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I don't want to ever have to do, and I can't even imagine the feeling of it. But it certainly, in my opinion, wouldn't be breaking a commandment. Mm-hmm. So when you look at things like that, they're worded in such a way that men wrote those. And again, I look at it as, God doesn't need you to worship him on a certain day. That is very much a primitive belief of mankind saying, well, we have to give a day for the Creator. Nobody can work. Nobody can do anything on that day. We must, God doesn't need your adoration more than anything. He wants you to use your free will and do God's will, because that's what feels good. That's what feels right. When you have a productive day, and you also helped somebody out, and you gave 50 cents to somebody at the grocery store outside that was begging, and you helped your kids with their homework, watched a movie with your wife, that's what makes you feel good. And that is doing, like I said, I try and do everything for the good. You shouldn't be doing anything to the negative. And I think another important part of life, and this is something that I think our parents tried to keep us from doing, and I understand why, and I do the same thing with my son, but is mistakes are okay. You're going to make mistakes, and you need to experience life in order to learn from mistakes. If you, just shelter your kids and teach them only the Bible and that this is the only truth, and anybody outside of this is off the beaten path and they're the devil. And I mean, if you treat somebody like that, then what you're doing is really creating a bubble for them that it will eventually pop, and they will come out of that bubble more confused than you could have ever, more damaged than you could have ever even imagined you were going to do.
Especially when you're told those things from people or individuals who they themselves, deep down inside, don't even know why they believe in them either. So they're telling you these truths and don't do this or God's going to get angry. Or I know for me, I was scared shitless, of hell. And that's why I always was worrying about, oh my gosh, am I going to go to heaven? I really don't want to go to hell. It was never about, I love God and I want to be with him forever.
Right, there was never a relationship.
I didn't want to burn in flames for eternity.
Right, and that's not the kind of person that you worship. And I think that's where we were both taught wrong. Why would you worship someone who is going to burn you if you do not? That's not somebody I want to worship. I don't respect that person. They have earned my adoration through fear, which is a big sign of government and tyrants, and it's just not right. It's not the way you treat people if you want them to worship you. And kind of like Mrs. said, the Bible is really a story of people taking over and inflicting this fear into people. The Bible flat out tells you that the governors and presidents of this world, the leaders of every country, are assigned by God. The Bible says that. So if you are a believer in the Bible and you say word for word that book is God's word, then you believe that, what's the guy's name in North Korea? Kim Jong-il.
Oh, yeah.
You think that he was assigned by God. You think that Barack Obama was put into office by God. You believe that, Nixon, who basically lied the entire time and faked moon landings, that still to this day are handicapping humanity. You believe that person was put there by God. It's an insane belief. Leaders are people usually corrupt with power. And so that's what the Bible tells you the story of, is that it's only inside you the ability to know what's right and wrong. And once you've given that to somebody else, they're going to run with it. And look at the Catholic Church. Look at these mega pastors like Joel Osteen and his $11 million house, and he makes $600,000 every weekend. And I mean, these guys are no longer doing the work of God. They're not giving money to those less fortunate. One time we figured out how much, and I can't say it offhand, maybe I'll find it at the next commercial, but we figured out how much Christians donate every year. And the number comes out so astronomically large. And that was just taking $800 per Christian family, multiplied by the amount of Christian families in the country. And that number comes out to something, I want to say it's on the order of $11 million a day. Yeah. But even to save the 30,000 kids who die every day in Africa would cost $2 a day per kid. So you're talking about $60,000 of that 11 million, leaving them with 10.8 million or whatever. It becomes bothersome that we're not putting our intentions where they should be, but we still think we're being the Church of God. We still think that we're being God's people by donating 10% of our money so that the pastor of that church can just recruit more people to give 10% of their money.
Yeah, and I think that in order to like kind of take a little step back and just realize that what we're trying to get across here is not saying how only our problems with Christianity and religion, but it's the problem that we have with that idea of what was I going to say?
No idea.
No, with it's not bashing Christianity, it's not bashing Catholicism. It's that you don't need to. Oh man, I totally forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead, babe.
Well, you don't need to look outside yourself for the truth. And if you've watched any of my
I remember.
Good. She just raised her hand.
Sorry.
For the record. Go ahead.
It's the whole idea of authorities. I forgot again.
You're so funny.
Sorry.
So, to us, it's just you can find the truth inside yourself, and I believe that that's where everyone should go for God. And I honestly never found God until I did that, and it took me 35 years, and there was no more freeing feeling than finally getting it. And I believe that each person can believe whatever they want. And you know what? Like I said last week, my mom believes in Jesus Christ as God on earth who came, died, rose again so that all mankind could rise at their deaths. And you know what? At this point, I don't have an issue with that. My mom is probably the best person that I know, and probably by far. And it was so cute. She actually told me, because she just retired, and she actually told me, I said, well, what are you going to do now that you're retired? She says, well, I've got to do a lot of things. I was reading the Bible recently, and I just thought about I've never visited anybody in prison, and I've never given people that were hungry food. So I want to start working at the soup kitchen, and I want to go to the prison and talk to people. I was just amazed. It's like she really has that great heart. But I think that I have a problem with Catholicism, obviously, but I also see my mom, and she's such a great person because of it. So it's hard for me to ever bash Christians. Some of them are great people. Again, where I'm saying the issue is in the belief that the God, the creator of this entire world, the creator of everything we see and everyone we see, would have given his directions for us to live through in a book. We know who writes books. Humans write books. We know who doesn't create worlds. Humans don't. Mm-hmm. So to me, it becomes quite obvious exactly what's going on. And I think that until I erased everything I've been told, everything I've been taught, everything that had been forced upon me, everything that was told to me as truth, without any doubt, once I erased that and just said, you know what, let's start all over. Let's find it ourselves. And again, I'll just bring it up real quickly that it really honestly took us laying in bed and saying, dear God, give us a year of searching and we will find you if we're supposed to.
Perfect lead into that whole... Perfect. Okay. So, yeah, we will... And it was really cute because it was very sincere. Like, it was really cute. And kind of, we make fun of ourselves kind of a little bit when we look back on it, but it was really cute. But it was the idea of we wanted to get away from and break away from, if we were asked something or if we were asked what we believe in or what we don't, we didn't want to say, oh, well, I know this because somebody told me about it. And that goes for everything in this world. NASA, science, history, mathematics. I mean, all these things that we have been grown in the society to know or to learn as true. I mean, the reasons behind every subject, every politician, every government, every whatever you want to touch on is because somebody told you that's how it is. And I think it goes for religions. It goes for how you live your life every day. How do you know X, Y, Z is true? Like, do you know because you searched it out yourself, or do you know because Joe President told you, or because science told you, or because school told you? I mean, really, really think about that.
It's
huge.
such a better feeling when you have come to conclusions on your own. It's not a good feeling just to be told where you live, to be told how something works. It's not. It's actually a tool of others to oppress you by saying, we know how to make electricity, you don't. We can fly to space, you don't. These kind of things hold humanity back. And what fun is it to go to school and learn things if you don't feel there's anything else to learn, if there's nothing else to discover? I told one of my big supporters and my co-host on my show, Bob, his son goes to a public school, a gifted school, but I had wrote him a letter and just basically said in it that, when you go to school, listen to your teachers and listen to everything they tell you. Remember it because you're going to need it for a test, but don't ever think that that's where the line ends. You're going to go to school and they're going to teach you that gas is what makes cars run. Well, if we teach kids that, then who's going to ever discover that maybe we can use water and vinegar to make cars run? And that's the problem with today's world, is that we've stunted the growth of every kid by just saying, this is the way it is. The world is a ball. It's been discovered already. You don't need to look into it. You don't need to test it. It is what it is. End of story. Well, the problem with that is, how much better would it have been for the last 10 years if in every 8th grade classroom, teachers said instead, let's break off into groups. Who thinks that the earth is round? Who thinks that the earth is flat? Okay, go to these sides of the room. You have a week to come up with your arguments and your tests, and let's hear some theories. Imagine all the classrooms around the world doing that for a week. Think of how much further we'd get in our general knowledge of where we live, how things work, free energy, things like that could really make a difference in the world, instead of just saying, we have science classes, they have tests, they have right and wrong answers. I mean, that makes no sense. If science is the never-ending pursuit of truth, how do you have right and wrong answers on a test? I mean, if we had a test when I was in 3rd grade, I would have put Pluto down as a planet. And today I would be wrong, but then I was correct. Things like that should not be on tests. And in fact, like I've said a ton of times, that I just see us as making a huge mistake in the way we teach kids. You could just think you could have the best teacher in the country wake up every morning and teach an hour-long class on the internet to 10 million kids at home. Just think if each of those kids gave a penny, for that one class. I mean, you're talking about school costing basically $1 over the course of the year, and those teachers would make a killing, and nobody would have to leave their house. Instead, we send kids to the higher education where they're spending $100,000 on their education, coming out and being in debt, which is all by plan. If you don't see that that is the goal, that is the reason why it's there, there's no other reason why we would send kids to Ivy League schools and they have to go live in dorms and they have to go across the country. If we actually really cared about learning, the world would be a completely different place.
Oh, the school system I have a huge problem with. And not just because school sucks. No, it's because the whole sole purpose of sending people to school to sit in a desk to learn XYZ subjects is so that way they can grow in the knowledge of the system that's been set up. So you can graduate high school, maybe go to college, maybe not, but get a job, make money, and live in the false idea of having to make a living for.
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
Your protection from deception. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We are at hour number 2 of Monday Night Jeranism Raw. I'm Jaren.
I'm Missa.
And we're here with you live on Truth Frequency Radio, where we are every Monday night. Hope you join us every Monday night from now until the end of times. So we'll just go a few more minutes, and then we're going to take some calls. Just wanted to mention a few things, but one thing that we wanted to point out was I always say in all my videos to not trust me. And of course, I say don't trust men, and well, I'm a man, but don't trust me because that's exactly what I'm saying the problem is that it's so important for each person to come to their own conclusions, and that's the only way you'll ever own anything. That's the only way you'll ever feel good about anything. And I feel too many people trust others and go through their life being a parrot, and that's just not living. Like I said, you get one chance at this, and if you choose to put that into somebody else's hands, well, I don't see how you can live with yourself. The feeling is so much better to come to conclusions yourself. If you're a Christian, make sure you understand where the Bible came from and the person that it's describing, and understand the damage that it can do to the atheistic world. It's very easy for atheists to laugh and make fun at Christians because it's kind of a ridiculous idea that they tell you, you better believe this book, you better love this God, or he's going to put you in hell, and they don't see the problem there.
And the whole idea of believing in something, whether it be the Bible or believing that what's another thing, or I don't know, whatever, believing in anything that an authority has told you is true, and then when asked, how do you know this is true? And you say, well, such and such told me. Is that satisfying? No. I know for us, being raised in church life, that was our whole life, is everything that we had believed to be true in life was told to us. And
you said that I remember you telling me stories about you could never stand up if people said in school or something like, oh, you love Jesus, like you go to church, like you would. No, I don't.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had I think I had like I love Jesus or Jesus rock sticker on my binder for like a week, and I get popular girl said like, oh look, Bible humper, and I was like, oh nuh-uh, that's crazy. This is my sister's old binder. Like and I hated that about myself, that I could never stand for something, even in little tiny things. Like if someone was talking to me about one of my friends and she wasn't there, like getting involved in garbage talk, and just to almost appease to that person and to make yourself look good. I mean, I know it sounds kind of cliche, but it's absolutely the truth. I hated not standing for something. And I think that really changed when I met you, because you were absolutely 100% different than anybody I ever met. You read me, you knew me, and I would do anything for you. That was the first time I could ever say that about anything. I would never have said that about Jesus.
Make me a sandwich. No.
Okay, bye.
So, I mean, I think that's so important that you have to really feel something yourself in order to protect it. And I would say the same thing about Catholicism, as it was taught to me. It was something that I went through my life as it being a part of me, but it really wasn't a part of me. I couldn't stand up for it because it wasn't something that I really came to the conclusion on my own. And I think that's a problem in every aspect, in the way that we teach in schools, in the way that religion teaches. It's just you really want to get away from that, forcing things on kids because you're doing more damage than good. They never feel comfortable in themselves because they are told there's something else, or to believe something that doesn't feel right to them. And so I just, real quick, finishing on the book being the Word of God, and I understand, but there's lines in the book that say flat out that, that these are established forever and ever, and that God's Word will never change, and the grass withers and the flowers fall, but the Word of God endures forever. These kind of things. And when the same Bible talks about, to treat women as dirty for the 7 days around their menstruation and things like that, we should be smart enough to realize that men wrote that, that men saw women as dirty. Men didn't want, men didn't want women speaking in church. To think that God wrote that in the book, that women should be quiet in church and ask their husbands at home is a shame. It's a travesty. And this is why atheists will make fun of Christians for all times.
It's easy to.
It's easy. It's like I said, it's like fishing. It's just it's if you're gonna use that book as your basis, then understand that the book has very bad, horrendous, terrible parts. And its origins may not be terrible.
It's important.
Yeah, but it may not be terrible because I think those people felt that way. I really think that they.
Well, regardless of that, I think really important.
I guess it's terrible. I mean, look at what they're saying, right?
Yeah, not so much terrible as much as it is. It's just it is. This is not what we're all taught today. Never question the set, whatever principle, whatever the subject may be. But it took me and Jaron, or at least me, looking into one history aspect of the Bible that started me on that's where this book, really, and then it kept looking into it. I mean, really knowing why you believe what you believe and where it came from. I mean, wouldn't you rather be a Christian after having studied the history of it? I mean, it's scary, but...
Well, it makes no sense that Christians dislike Catholics, but they're Bible believing, and the Catholics wrote the Bible.
They only dislike Catholics because they were taught that.
Right?
It's not like
absolutely.
they came to that on their own conclusion.
No. Oops. So anyway, yes, the word of God may endure forever. So if you work on the Sabbath, you must report immediately to be stoned to death. These are the kind of things that the Bible says, that if you're saying that that's the word of God and that you believe it word for word, then you have to believe that. In order to have my mind changed about the Bible or Christianity or religion in general, I'd have to put my faith in what a human has said to me. And
that's dangerous.
Yeah, a lot like you have so easily put your faith in what humans wrote in a book simply because the book says God inspired it. But has God told you personally that those are his words? If he did, then he would tell us all. But he didn't, because they aren't. Mm-hmm. So the past, 5 years, 3 years, I've studied this a lot, quite possibly, too much. And it's just, I want to tell you guys where I'm coming from so that you understand. And I hope that it opens your eyes a little bit so that you start to kind of break free of the shackles.
And approach everything in life this way. Not just Bibles and Christians and religions, but approach everything that you come across in life with the idea of, I don't know anything about this, and I'm not going to believe what someone tells me that's what this thing is. I'm going to decide on my own what this is and what it's about, and decide from there if you want to believe in it or not. But don't just believe in something because that's what either all these people are doing, or what someone tells you is the truth, or Levi Lesko told you because you're a snake bird or whatever.
Exactly. But anyway, and just the connection that we see between religion and science,
yes,
and the way that they're both meant to keep you held down. They're both meant to control you. Yes, people say, oh, you hate science, you hate math. No, I never said that. I'm saying that there's elements in them. And when I mention science, I'm kind of talking more atheists, because most people who believe 100% in the science that they're taught are atheists, because it's meant to
be the antithesis of religion.
Anything that they can say that, when you come up with something, you say, this is always true. Whatever we say is true. We have all the facts, and we can't touch anything supernatural. So you've basically said, we've created this system that is always true as long as it doesn't include God. Mm-hmm. And then you go and try and prove something like evolution, and you do 1 million tests, which in the scientific method should prove it to be absolutely 100% false. It cannot be true, yet it slipped through. Mm-hmm. Now, evolution is what we're teaching kids in schools, when it's the biggest joke and non-provable theory of all time.
If people, and I feel like a lot of people know this already, but I've always come back to it because I feel like people always defend their whatever their status with such and such thing they were taught in school. But the school system, and I don't want to sound like a psycho crazy person, but it is absolutely the truth that the school system was established by Freemasons. The idea of going to a class and being taught by a tutor or being taught by a teacher some subject one way or another, that was Freemasonic from origin, day one. And it's not how life is supposed to be. You wouldn't be born into this world and think you should sit at a desk and be taught by a teacher something. No, you would go out in the world, into nature, and you would see that if I kicked this tiger over here, that he would get hurt, and that hurts me too. Or you would experience life by just experiencing it and learning lessons through it, not from someone who lived life before you and thought they figured it out and now need to tell you the truth.
And certainly not through a book that tells us who your creator is and how he acted, and it being completely against your idea of what moral is. I mean, let me just indulge you why I wouldn't see the Christian God as being worshipable. And I'm a moderately compassionate person. I'm rational. I'm moral. I'm somewhat nurturing, right?
You're very compassionate. I would agree with that.
Most of all, I'm a husband. I'm a father. So I propose to you this like a human question. And can't you say that if there was a God, then he is our greatest thought magnified, right? We can't even fathom him. So whatever emotion we feel as humans, being created in God's image and likeness, well, God is infinitely more feeling, for he is the creator of all things created. So I believe this concept is pretty safe for anyone to assume. And with that being so, my love for my son must be a small fraction of God's love for his children. So speaking as a father, I can safely say that if my son went and committed the greatest harm on me tomorrow, no matter what it was, if he did it every hour of my life, kicking me in the face, I don't think I could ever wish him harm. Why? Simply because he's my child. He didn't ask to be born. He never asked to come into the world. So how could I ever wish 5 minutes of torture on him? A friend of mine, when kind of talking about this, said that God is just punishing his children. And he said, don't you punish your children? And I said, of course, that's true. I'm not against spanking a kid, to be honest, as a punishment to teach them not to do something I forbid them to do. But the punishment is, number one, temporary, and two, my son would have heard the rules from my mouth. So if hell was, say 80 years of torment for somebody like Hitler, or if the punishment matched the crime, maybe that would make sense. But eternal pain and suffering for 100 bad years doesn't really seem like somebody I want to worship.
Especially when the punishment is being bestowed on you for not, like you said, Corey would have heard the rules from your mouth. Right. Like, if this book can be interpreted, it's poetry, it's allegory, it's real stories, it's not. Like, how could you be punished for something and be like, but God, I interpreted
right.
this
or I was
part.
born in China, so I didn't read that book.
Yeah, that's not the creator of this world. And I think that's the issue, is people equate the God of the Bible with the creator, which that is a huge no-no. That is not at all what is the truth, so...
Okay, so we're going to try and take a call. If you guys want to call in, we'll see how this goes.
Really, ask us anything. We will talk about anything.
Hello, caller, are you there? Oops.
Hello?
How's it going?
Oh.
Hello?
Good, how you doing?
Very good.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, I was just consumed everything you guys just said. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Hello? Okay.
I can hear you.
I was just curious, all right, who am I, what am I, and why am I here?
So I hope you're asking for my opinion more than I don't know that. That's
not really your.
Well,
not really your opinion. I'm just kind of an overall conception of for everyone.
I would say that we are.
Who are we?
We are gifts. Like the life that we have is a gift, and I think that we are here to do God's will. Personally, I feel like God is in each and every one of us. I feel like your neighbor, your best friend, your sister, the person across town, every person is an equal piece of God, and if we all treated each other that way, that's doing God's will. And that's, I kind of look at it as I could never fathom God sitting up in a recliner and watching a girl get raped, for instance. That's just not something that settles with me. So I had to come up with a way that made sense to me. And what makes sense to me is God needed to experience all of life. And so possibly he's the girl getting raped while also being the rapist. And that's not saying that was his decision. He's given us free will to do that. But I feel like that's kind of God going through life with us. He gives everybody free will, but you feel good when you do the will of God, and you feel rotten when you don't. So, I mean, that's how I see it. How do you see it?
Well, I guess the way I'd feel is my father taught me years ago the who is the whole. That's everyone. The what is the identity when you were born, and then why we're doing what we're doing is a divine purpose within each individual, and they usually have to find that, But like you say, you guys were talking earlier, how the world is so elusive and deceptive, and takes you down roads that are dead ends so many times, and
absolutely,
and we're being lied to every aspect of life, and also we're caught up in what you call slave speak. The words are enslaving one to it, and these individuals know this, because it's kind of like me right now. If I asked you, would you promise to call me back? I really need to talk to you. And then you say yes. I'm enslaving you to that word, and I'm enslaving myself because I'm expecting that call. So we can become enslaved to these words, and it kind of takes you away from the true spirituality one should really, or the divine purpose one should really be connected to. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. In fact, I mean, I know that we are given the gift of speech for a reason, but I've always thought about how much of a hindrance it is, because if you look at animals, they're never taught something as far as by words, which is what they do, is they put us in classrooms and give us words that they teach us what they mean, and they teach us how to read them, and that they're in these books, and that's what's important. But all it's doing is it's a way of indoctrination. And animals don't have to go through that. They get to experience life for what it is.
Simple.
Which is simple. Life it should be simple. It should be so. I feel like I spent 35 years wasting, and I don't mean, maybe 30 years, but whatever. I feel like I wasted time because I felt like I already had the truth. I thought I knew where I lived. I thought I knew what I believed. I thought I knew what I was taught. I knew how to read. I knew how to do math. So at that point, you kind of have...
It's empty feeling.
It's an empty feeling because there's nothing else. And then when I erased all that and said, no, I want to do good for people. I want to work for the good of mankind. I want to leave my mark here. I hope somebody mentions my name a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks after I die. That's important to me, is not to be just, if we're going to live forever, that's the only way you can do that. I mean, look at Jesus, right? I mean, who could say a bad thing about somebody who, whether or not he was the person in the Bible or whether or not he was God, regardless, his name is being spoken by billions of people across the world every single day. So whatever he did something right, and that's why I believe when people say, "Are you a Christian?" It's like walk in his path. I don't mean you need to bow to him, but walk in his path.
Well, the interesting thing is, I'm still here. The interesting thing is that, I never met Jesus Christ.
Me neither.
Did you?
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
I've never met the man. No. It's no different if I started to say basically that you were Jesus Christ, and I said, I'm going to write a story about you, and I'm going to talk all these different parables, how you spoke to people in parables, and went around and how profound and always talk the goodness about what you were. I didn't want to ever talk bad about you, but all the good things that you had did.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And you get caught into that, and then get caught into that story, and then it goes back to it's a story.
Well, that's why I wish that people saw it that way. Yeah, I really wish people saw
What's
it
the
that
true
way.
definition of stupid?
Yeah, it's anything
What's
told.
the true definition? Well, people do think that way. The thing is that you guys are getting out to people, and you'd be really surprised how many people are really understanding. Yeah, I know. I struggle every day talking to people because, you know, the blind leading the blind. I'm sure you've heard it and walk around, you know, and I see it. But you know, the thing is that people know deep down in their within their dynamics of who they are in that whole, and they know that it's not right. Things are changing. Things are shifting. I've known this my whole life. I went to school when I was a kid. You know, I went in there and the teacher would give me candy just to sit there and shut my mouth. You know, just be quiet. Shut your mouth. I'll give you candy at the end of the day.
Do your job.
You know,
Right,
deal
exactly.
with me, see? Because you know, and my father's a school teacher. So, you know, so I'm coming home. My dad's teaching all these kids, you know, and I'm not learning a damn thing, you know. And I'm thinking, you know, and none of it made sense. And then they tried to get me to read, you know, and I didn't want to read. You know, I didn't like to read. It wasn't. I didn't care, you know. It wasn't in my scope of things, you know. I wanted to experience other things, like you said, and they wanted to indoctrinate me, you know. And everybody, you know, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got, and I just got the heck out of there.
Well, I think that's the story of a lot of people.
You know,
same thing. You know, the books, like you said too. I mean, how many books were we all supposed to read for high school? And if you think about how many we all read, it was like one. If we were now, I love to read, or it's just I want knowledge now because it's something that I've decided, not something that was forced on me. Like you have to go in that room, you have to read that book because we're telling you to. It's not the way that we should treat people. I mean, kids have the most free spirit, the most open minds of anyone, and we're killing it. We're smacking them in the head at that young age. So I appreciate you calling though, and saying that stuff because it's hard for some people to say. So call again sometime, but I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for taking my call, and you both have a wonderful night, and may God bless you, or whatever it takes, or whatever you believe in, however it works for you.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Too.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Before you answer the next call, I wanted to say something.
Go ahead. All right, caller, are you there?
Yeah, hey, what's up, buddy?
What's going on? You want to talk? No? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, hey, Jaron, it's John, by the way.
Hey, John.
Great show. Yeah, man, it's so funny because, you know, you'd think you and I would have had this sort of conversation off to the side, but, you know, I really agree with you, or tend to agree with you on a lot of the points that you've made. Right, you know, from the beginning, you know, the tree of knowledge being conspicuously placed at the center of the garden, you know, with God fully knowing our inquisitive nature, you know, it's almost as if it was set up to fail. And the Luciferian religion is based on this obvious contradiction in the Bible.
Right.
That, you know, it seems more logical that the initiations or indoctrinations that you described is more in line with this, you know, hidden knowledge or gnosis or knowledge of good and evil.
Isn't it funny, though, because that's what they base it off of. They think God's a tyrant, and so they follow Satan because he tried to free them and give them knowledge. It's such a weird thing to me.
All because of that book.
Right. And I understand that there is truth in there, and that's why so many people, it's not something I could spit on or step on or throw, just because I think it's a great book, but it's kind of a story of human history. It's not even, can't even really call it a book, it's a collection of many books. But the fact that it's kind of maintained and kind of come along with us, and it does show us the history of mankind. Look at the thought processes of people when it went from, you know, if you work on this day, you can't mix threads of your clothing. I mean, if people think that really was God writing that, it's insanity to me. It's so clearly people writing, and I'm not saying they were evil, so they told people you can't wear crisscross clothes. No, they were just saying they were trying to do what they thought was right, and we are grown up enough, at least I would think, to recognize that. But we're obviously not. I mean, I don't know, the USA is probably, 75%? Well, I don't know how many Bible believing, maybe 65%, 70%. Still a lot.
Yeah, there had to be truth in there, or people wouldn't believe it at all. If it was all evil, then, well, heck, it would have been gone a long time ago. They have to keep love your neighbor in there because, well, Jesus would say something like that, I guess.
And it's like poetry. It's a great, some things are written really well. There's Psalms, stuff like that.
Some are written really terrible, though.
Some are written really bad. So,
yeah.
Did you grow up religious, John?
Well, I grew up in a Greek Orthodox environment. Yeah, pretty strict religious. I went to church every Sunday growing up, with my parents. But then, when I sort of broke free of that and then I went off to college, obviously I really didn't enjoy going to church. It didn't resonate with me. But, I think something that you mentioned, and I also agree that the teachings of Jesus resonate with me a great deal. But, for example, certain actions of the Roman Catholic Church and even the Orthodox churches are guilty of this. But, the Crusades, the Inquisition, all these terrible things that have come out of the church that's supposed to be the
all right, we got to run.
Radio Ranch with Robert Sales, Monday through Friday on Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. It is Monday. It is Raw. This is Jaron.
And it's Nissa, and it's oh so raw.
It's oh so raw. And I just smacked you in the face accidentally.
Thanks, babe.
So, lines are open if anybody wants to call in. Thank you guys for tuning in again. And again, and I don't know why we feel the need to always do this, but I apology to Christians if you, we have nothing against you. It's just that we see things a certain way. And again, I had so many emails, at least 15, from people saying, you need to accept Jesus. He's the only truth. He's the way. And again, I have no problem with that if you come from a position of...
That's what you believe.
Yeah, and that's great. Jesus is great in the book. For the most part, it's fine. But I have some issues with the way that he has been used. For instance, the idea that we wear, and I say we, but people wear his death scene around their necks.
It's so bloody.
It is just, it's disgusting.
No one dies like that. It is the most horrific, bloody scene, and people think it's godly. It's terrible.
We went to the San Juan Mission about 3 weeks ago and went to the church there just to kind of walk in and look, and it really is it does not invoke feelings of love and compassion and generosity and empathy. None of the things that we should be feeling when we feel connected to God. You walk in there and it feels dark and damp and creepy, and there's some sort of murder going on somewhere, or somebody's hanging from the cross. And
doors
it's just,
are locked.
Yeah, it's really creepy, and it's just like, I feel like we just went wrong somewhere. And I think that we can stand up and say enough is enough and really snap out of it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too far ahead of the curve or I would always say at first when we started looking at space and I said, I just feel like space is fake. I said, either I'm evolving or people are evolving past me. It took me a while. I could never figure out which one it was, but I just knew that something wasn't right about all that. And, I've kind of come to the conclusion at this point that until I'm shown anything other than what I've been shown, I'm under the complete assumption that there's nothing real about space. It's just not real.
And also, I think if you're going to take anything from this night, and we're hoping not to really ever touch on this in this much extent, but just remember that our families are still religious. So for anybody to come along and say that we hate Christians or we hate Catholics. Like, that is absolutely the furthest from the truth. Our passion, at least I know for me, is I want more than anything for my mom and my sisters and my brothers to think for themselves, to find their own way in their lives and not feel like they have to live the super duper awesome Christian life, because that's not life. And I just want so badly for every single person to be able to know that they're living their life the way that they have discovered it to be perfect for them, and not because religion or science or an authority told you, or because we told you. Like, find your own way, and that's so important.
But I think it's important to think about what we're teaching kids and we're telling people when we say things like the God of the Bible is the real God, because then they also say, this is what I was taught, is that God knows all things. He knows the end. And it's like, wait a second. So God creates people knowing that they are going to turn their back on him and eventually burn in hell. And they can't really get around that one. Well, it's like, well, that's what you're saying. You need to think before you tell people that, because that's not a very pretty picture of a God who is just creating people just because he wants some opposition to the good, knowing that he's going to send you to hell. I don't believe in a God like that. I don't think that if a God like that existed, he wouldn't exist.
And nobody should feel like they have to believe. Nobody should feel like they have to believe in a God like that. You don't. Nobody
so many
should
people
ever.
Are told that they have to.
Yes, no one would ever come to that conclusion on their own if they'd never read a book or seen the Bible. Would you? If you were grown, like we always say this as an example, but if you were raised in the forest or out in the desert, you and me and Jaren, if we were raised out there, would we come to the conclusion that, wait, hey babe, did Jesus come to you? No. Hey, did Saturn light up and now all these moons are going around it? No. Everything, almost everything that is told to you to believe and just trust its integrity or its truth is not. And I think anybody who tells you to just believe them just because, that should be a red flag to everybody, and to be like, probably not, or I'll look into it and then I'll be the judge.
Yeah, and I just see, and again, if you want to call in, we've got 20 more minutes, 866-37-TRUTH, open lines. But I just have a problem with Christians who also want to push it off as original sin. We were all born in sin. Stop telling people that they were born in sin. What does that do to build somebody up? It makes them feel gross and dirty, and they've already done wrong by the Creator, and they have to somehow earn it back, but it seems like such a lofty goal. It's so primitive that we teach people that. I mean, if any Christian can walk into a children's ward at a hospital and insist that it's correct that the children there suffer as a result of original sin and they should die, it's ridiculous. Those people have major problems.
Yeah.
I insist that those who worship the Lord knowing this hypocrisy must be as cruel as the God that they believe in. Mm-hmm. They must really kind of get off on that kind of punishment. And I think a lot of Christians kind of put themselves up on that little pedestal and look down at people like, well, I know the truth and you don't. And if you only would follow the God of the Bible and worship Jesus, and if you would accept him into your heart, you would live forever like I'm going to. And it's a terrible, terrible way to be.
It's a brainwashing. And my sister says, the whole idea of being born into sin, which is just so horrible, because from day one, if you're in a Christian or a Catholic or any religious home that enforces that sort of thinking, you feel like a wretched person, that you need to have somebody come save you. You need to have someone cleanse you. Or when Jaren said, like, God knows everything. Well, actually, the truth is you know everything. You know every fucking thing that you've done in your whole entire life. Nobody else does. And only you can correct things that you think have been done wrong. And you're not wretched unless you think you're wretched.
Yeah, and you can always earn it back. And, one of the criticisms I most frequently hear is that basically we don't have a right to judge God. I hear that a lot. You don't have a right to judge God. And it's like, really?
Who said
I have no right to question who I worship.
Right.
I mean, Christians proclaim God is the definition of good. All morality proceeds downwards from him, so it makes no sense to apply moral standards to him. It's like, I interject. I mean, God allowed Adam and Eve to eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge, right? Which allowed us to be like gods. So now we know the difference between good and evil. Well, that biblical verse written in the first book of Genesis conflicts with the same argument that the Christians attempt to use. If we as humans are now capable of knowing the right from wrong, and we are like gods, why can't we use our judgment knowing right from wrong? Mm-hmm. How can it be lower than God's form of judgment if God is the one that claimed that we are like him? Mm-hmm. So
I remember us going to one of your friends' houses to watch, I don't even know, we didn't even watch fighting, but it was some fight between, was it Merriweather or
Probably,
something?
Mm-hmm.
But, like, at the end, one of them obviously lost, and he's like, thank God that I had this chance to do this. And, like, well, then if he won, then he would also thank God. It's like, you don't know if God allowed something to happen to you or not. Like, there's no
What's that
indicator.
Christian line with prayers? It's like the get out of free card, get out of jail free card
it's
for
like
God.
God gets off easy. Like if your baby dies, then you're like, if like, let's just say your child dies from a disease or something, and then the parents are Christians and they're like, well, it was God's will, he did it for a purpose, for a reason. So if it was God, he didn't get in trouble. But if let's say your sister, I don't know, a good thing happens, then they praise God for giving them that great thing that happened. I mean, what a great feeling to be God, to like, oh, well, these people will figure it out for themselves. I'm always in the right. So
one of the Facebook posts your mom did, her mom one time said, praise God, I just fixed the screen all by myself. I rewired the screen door all by myself and couldn't have done it without Jesus. And it's like, no, you did that yourself. Like, you did that all by yourself, and you can't even take credit for things. You're trying to pass the credit off. Be proud of yourself, or else when will you ever feel proud of yourself? We have a call, so we'll take a call. See who's there. Here we go. Hey, how's it going? Hello.
Hey, Jared.
Yeah, how's it going?
Hey, man. How you doing, man?
Very good.
Good. How are you?
Excellent.
Hey, big fan of the show, man. Big fan.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Love love the work that you do. Hey, man, I was wanting to talk to you about the Mythbusters a little bit. The more I look into it, too, I just see that those guys are just totally full of shit, it seems like. I was wondering if you've ever looked into the making of the hydroxy gas from water, one of the natural energy.
No, is that something recent, or is that the thing? I know that.
Well, no, actually, it's been getting done for a while. It was actually kind of funny because the Mythbusters actually attempted it, and they had Grant was trying to do his modified square wave or whatever to yield the most gas from the water, and they wind up making like one bubble. And
Really?
if you watch some other YouTube videos, there's kids that are taking stainless steel washers and a 9-volt battery and are making just all kinds of bubbles.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust those guys at all. They're completely, they've completely sold out. It's obvious. I mean, I don't know if you watched a video I did recently where they go up in the Concorde and they can't stop talking about, oh, we got to see the curvature of the Earth. And you could see right behind him that the Earth was flat as could be. The only way you can see a curvature is through a GoPro camera. And it's just to say something so, utterly false like that is just, it tells me that those people are definitely
not out to bust anything.
Yeah, they're not busting any myths. Now, I don't know if you saw this today. I just saw it today, and I'm actually was going to talk about it tonight, but I don't understand it at all yet. Did you know that somebody made an announcement today about releasing some free energy patent?
I did hear something about that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hear something about that.
I don't know what that all entails. I went to the site and kind of listened a little bit, but it looked like somebody has created some sort of free energy device and they're going to be handing it out for free. That's what, I mean, it could be just a big hoax for all we know, but I've always kind of thought that if anybody ever, was able to discover something like that, that the way they would have to do it is to get it out as fast as possible. And I know they announced it today and said, I think like within a week or 10 days at the most, they're going to start shipping them to anybody who wants them. So it's really exciting. Hopefully it's not just another joke, but the guy seems sincere. I can't remember the name of the site. Do you remember?
Nope.
Yeah,
He
I'll
was
have
very
to.
confusing.
Are you familiar with
We
are
couldn't
you familiar
tell
with
if
the
he was
bloom box
talking
at all?
about.
With who?
With the bloom box?
No.
Blooms, like flower blooms. I guess it got started in Silicon Valley. It was, I think it's been 6 or 7 years now, but he kept the whole idea like totally on the down low, hush hush, had just millions and millions and millions of dollars of investments, but they still didn't have anything to show for it.
Oh,
And
geez.
I think it was maybe 2 years ago, Leslie Stahl on 20 Minutes or whatever, 2020, she wound up doing an interview with him. And he supposedly has this energy box that you can put natural gas into it or whatever fuel you want, and it'll actually convert it to electricity. And it's funny because he was wanting to put a box in the corner of everyone's house to get everybody off grid. And so far, the only people that I've really seen with his technology is Google. Google actually has, different, they're Google facilities, but they have these bloom boxes actually on their front lawn, and they're able to make so much electricity, they're able to send it back. They're actually able to sell it back to the grid.
So you think
was actually really interesting.
You think that guy sold out, or why else would he have not released what he had?
No, I think he's for real. I think he was keeping it on the down low for so long. That way his ideas couldn't get crushed or he wouldn't get off or, missing for the technology that he came out with. But I think it's real. It was just a matter of, I think he was really trying to keep it under wraps just so it would take off, but it's still not to the point where he was wanting it, where everybody would have one in their backyard. I still think that's a way off. I was wondering if I could ask you, what do you think about the, you get me going on a lot of different things, because it makes you rethink things that you've seen like when you were younger or a kid. And last week I was actually watching some Hindenburg footage, which is funny because the Mythbusters also did the Hindenburg. And it's real strange to watch. You think of hydrogen and it's real explosive, and it's like it just kind of, the outer skin burned off of it the way it fell down, and it's real strange. It's real strange to think about it, and I was wondering if they made it.
Yeah, something I haven't looked into, but I haven't looked into it, to be honest. But I mean, basically anything that we look into, it seems like, regardless of whether that event really happened, the way that it's told to us is always constructed. And that might not be so much the case now going forward, because with the internet, you would hope that there's enough truth out there. But I mean, just look at what NASA did as far as coming out and saying, first of all, that they had eaten lettuce in space for the first time, where they made that announcement 10 years ago and it came out the exact same way. So I'd still say 75% of people, if you were to ask them, hey, when did NASA ever eat lettuce? They would say, oh yeah, they just did it for the first time. They've completely forgot about the previous time. Just like I'm really not nervous, but I hate the fact that they say they found water, because it kind of leads me to think, what comes with water? Once you find water somewhere, then the next thing they're going to say is, oh, now we found life. And even if it's a dead little being, then that's a good way for them to kind of get more people to erase the creator. I mean, if that's all they have to say is, hey, we found this dead little alien being and he lived on Mars, and if they come out with that and people believe it, then they're going to say, oh, there can't be a God, because the God of the Bible, or the God we believe in, only created humans. He never mentioned creating other beings on Mars. So it always seems like they've got an end goal. It can't just be announcing that there's water on Mars. Who cares?
We all have to be aware.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Well, I don't even think there is Mars, but so I mean, until I see it, until I stand on it, they can shove it where the sun don't shine, because it just doesn't mean anything. I think it's so ridiculous, the amount of money that we've put into space travel when we're so far away from taking care of each other here. Once heaven was on Earth, great. Let's start exploring outside of that and see if we can bring some goodness other places. But we're run by a bunch of tyrants, and we think it's important to go take our craziness to other places. It's like, relax. I mean, how many places can you wreck? You're wrecking the earth every day with chemtrails, and it's like they need another place to spray. You know, it's like ridiculous.
We don't need any more dead.
That's right. We're going into outer space now. We're going to ruin that.
Oh, exactly. It's like just leave everything. You're already ruining this place, and hopefully, I do think that the earth is alive and can rejuvenate itself, but it just seems like they're not stopping. I mean, you still see these lines in the sky. I don't know if they're trying to reverse like the sun hitting the earth, so they're trying to kind of create like a layer because they know that they've kind of done some damage and they're trying to help the earth, but regardless, they're doing some damage, and it ain't pretty.
It's another distraction to look up in the sky and not down on earth.
Absolutely. Totally. It's always look elsewhere. You need something else to make you happy. And that's the feeling for a lot of these guys. I have that guy, Red's Rhetoric. I don't know if you know who he is, but he loves to make videos. He's like,
my God.
Volume 10 of Jeranism Sucks or whatever. And I mean, that poor guy, if he finds out that space is fake, he would kill himself because he needs that. He thinks rockets and orbital mechanics and the ISS are the only things that matter in life. Like if you took that away from him, he would literally lose his mind. And that makes me sad because, and I don't like to post either that we're in a dome or that it's endless land because I don't know. But I don't like the idea of saying that there's more land because that's like saying I'm not happy here. Yeah. And I think we can be happy here. This is plenty of land. We got plenty of goodness around us. And so if we start already looking for more, it's like, no, perfect your little circle here and then move out and check if there's more land. But I've got people emailing me saying, I'm just going to go, man. I'm just going to go and go cross Antarctica and try and find the new land. I bet you there's a paradise over there. It's like, what are you going to go over there and do?
Are you going to die and that's your last thing, going looking for
Or even
land?
What if you find it? You're going to go over there and find more land and be like, okay, now I'm here with nowhere to live and nowhere to work and no way to make money. It's like, you're not going to find leprechauns and pots of gold over there. So I don't know. It's just crazy. It's like, let's worry about each other. Let's worry about, like I said last week, it's like help the person to your left. It's just so simple in my mind. And I wish I could spread that out, but you can't. It's just, but if it's like help the person to your left and the world would be perfect. How hard is it to take care of one person? And if we all did that, what a different world we'd live in. So,
or take care of yourself.
Or that's the same thing. Yeah. If you took care of yourself, a lot of people just depend on everybody else and they want to skate by and skate through. And it's just, you're responsible for your life. That's how I look at it. And you should have to only answer to yourself of whether or not you were a good person. And if you're making people feel bad all day, you're going to feel like crap and change your ways. So, well, where are you calling from?
New Mexico.
Oh, New Mexico. You've been there.
Yes, many times.
Albuquerque.
Oh, Albuquerque? Oh, see? There you go.
Same spot.
Same spot.
So pretty there. I love it.
My wife says so pretty there.
Very rich, though, in dollar bills. They're very rich.
A lot of people wealthy there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here and there. Depends on what area you go into.
Guess that's kind of true everywhere.
Big churches.
She said big churches. Is it religious? Heavily religious?
Again, spots. Spots are.
All right, well, we appreciate you calling in. Thanks a lot for watching the videos and everything.
Thanks, call again.
Yeah, man. Great to talk to you guys. Really love what you do. And
I appreciate that a lot. It makes us feel good because I do get a lot of hate mail too, but I know that there's a lot of people out there that are at least like listening and feel the same way, and that's all we were hoping for when we first said it is we can't be the only ones who feel like it's just something ain't right here, and maybe if we speak up, it'll help in some way. So glad that you are happy listening.
Absolutely. You've done some great work.
All right, thanks a lot.
For everybody. And
appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Have a great night, guys.
Hey, appreciate that.
All right.
Another caller?
No other callers.
Oh.
So anyway, but I mean, one of the things that he mentioned about the hoax busters or hoax, whatever they're called, Mythbusters, hoax busters. With the Mythbusters, to me, is just another scam, and I'd watch out for them. They're everywhere now. Look at Richard Branson. Sorry to say, but that is nothing more than a scam. I mean, think of all these things that we've heard about. If you think back 15 years, they were talking about giving people rides to space. 10 years ago, we're going to take these planes to space and show people space. And 5 years ago, oh, we're going to do that. And I mean, we should have asked that guy about it, actually, because they're out of New Mexico. Richard Branson, he took over basically a whole city, and the city paid for it, actually voted for it in an election, and paid a bunch of $1 million to have this huge monstrosity of a building built out in the middle of nowhere, and it's a ghost town. There's nothing there now, and actually, somebody ran away.
Nobody in town wanted it, actually. Everyone's like, this is stupid. But they were like lying to them, saying, it's going to be great.
Right.
Everyone needs to be interested in it.
Yeah, they wanted it when they were being lied to, and then when they found out there's nobody there. So it's just, I see those things popping up everywhere, and we were looking last night, like the Google X Prize and all these different things. I mean, those have been going on for 10 years. Oh, we're going to give away $1 million to the first person that can create something to go land on the moon. Well, then you have all these sponsors dumping money into this Google's X Prize so they can make $4 million in donations, give away $1 million to the winner. They keep the $3 million, and everybody goes about their days, and nobody even questions them like, hey, you never went to the moon.
Or how even worser, or sorry, that's not a word, but even
we
worse.
We can say worser.
Okay. Worser is the idea, how many kids did, they made their own, what were they? Like science experiments. Gave them to freaking NASA to send up to space and have their science experiments done, and that was the shuttle that blew up. I mean, what a slap in the face to America! Like, oh, sorry, kids, your experiments aren't going to make it to space this time.
Yeah, and they said some of those kids had spent 2 years on those experiments. They were all high school and junior high kids, and then that's the Falcon 9 or the Dragon, whatever, that blew up recently from SpaceX. It's so sad because you should have seen it coming. They have all these kids working for 2 years to build a science experiment, and we're just going to go blow it up because it means nothing to them, but means everything to us.
If they tried to do one of the science experiments in space, it wouldn't. If the kids are smarter than NASA, so they're like, oh shoot, it's
that's
not
another
turn
funny
out
thing.
Right.
NASA actually asked in a post. It says NASA is asking for the public's help on ways that they can live on Mars. That is, I mean, honest to God, what is going on? We've given them $1 trillion, and now they're asking
for
us
our opinions too?
How to live on Mars. It's like, how do we know? You're the ones who are supposed to know, not us.
They landed there, supposedly.
Yeah, sure. So, I appreciate you guys listening. This definitely flew by a lot quicker than last week, where I felt like I was here for a month. But I appreciate you guys more than you even know. If you can donate, patreon.com/jeranism. Look for us on YouTube. And do me a favor, be kind to one another. Don't lie to each other. And open up your mind. There's truth inside. This has been Jeranism.
And his wifey. Oh, miss.
Talk to you guys soon.